we've helped each other in different ways, and he's the process superstar. I seriously don't know anyone else that can do what he does in all the years that I've been trading. So it's awesome to have you here. Thank you for joining us today, and I'll let you take the mic and begin the interview.
Right on. Hey, appreciate that, Ziggy. Did anybody jugging? I read your journal from today. So did anybody else trade today?
I did.
How did you do?
I did well. I mean, there's elements that I did well and not. I was happy with the trade outcome. Process wise, I made a mistake of I think I let a little bit of fear creep in because I was just overly defensive when really I had every reason to press, and so that kind of slipped out. But the read in the morning and the trade outcome went well.
That's cool. Yeah, I think over the years I've just like really developed a sense of this, even almost this ethereal intuition, which I don't like to have be a part of process. In fact, it's not. But for the last 2 days, I was just like, I just don't think it's going anywhere, and I really couldn't base that on anything. And then, of course, I know the Powell news was, or Powell discussing, but you've seen that so many times where it's on there, but it doesn't mean it's going to do anything. And then sometimes it does, and sometimes it doesn't. And I just find that fascinating how sometimes the market will, you just, the more you look at it, the more you become aware of its just natural tendencies. So I don't know. I just thought that was interesting. That's all.
Yeah, for sure.
Well, why don't we get started? Jugging ticks. I've thought about your name for a while. I just think that's a funny name.
Yeah, my
Um,
real name is Mason. You can call me Mason. I don't mind that at all.
Oh, right on, Mason. Well, I figure we'll just jump right in. So why don't you do this and tell me, in a couple of minutes, why don't you tell us how you got into trading and what you're trading today?
Yeah, well, I've been aware, not necessarily in the markets for probably 3, 4, going on 5-ish years, somewhere around there. Really only super into it for probably 2 or 3. I think what really got me deep into it was the whole meme stock era and crypto, that going on probably somewhere around 2020 or so. Got into the whole GME, AMC thing. Uh, that eventually led to losing a bunch of money in crypto, and then decided I was going to be an option scalper. Of course, that was a bad idea. Ended up losing money doing that, and eventually found my way to futures and fell in love.
Mm,
Um, Started out scalping, basically doing the same thing I was doing with options. It was a lot of really basic EMA crossover stuff that I wouldn't even touch now. Um, and then eventually I found Apteros and NADRO, and that was like the closest thing to like the truth for me. Like that was my aha moment. It was finally something I could understand, and the whole process gave me a better understanding, like where I could see what was happening, and it felt like I understand it.
right.
And that I've been going hard in that, all in on NADRO for probably 6 to 8 months now, and strictly just trading ES. Um, Micros at the moment, wanting to go up to the full size. But yeah, that's about it.
What do you like about trading and what don't you like about trading?
Um, well, of course, the money. I think anyone who tries to disregard that is lying to themselves. But mainly the freedom it gives you. I had a 9 to 5 day job. Um, about a year ago, it was almost a year ago is when I quit. Um, and I liked what I was doing, but it was just missing something, and I wanted. Really, the trading isn't the end goal for me. It's just entrepreneurship in general. I want to create businesses, and this is kind of my transition to that. Um, but along the way, I've kind of fallen in love with it. So I'm not necessarily opposed to trading for the long game.
Mm. So what don't you like about it?
What don't I like about it? Of course, the stress isn't ideal. Everything that would be perfect without it. That would be the best job in the world. Um, yeah, I guess mainly the uncertainty. So I think I find a lot of comfort in knowing what's going to happen, and there is none of that in trading.
Yeah. Have you tried? It sounds like you recently came to NADRO and developing value. I've looked at your charts and stuff like that. So have you tried many
Yeah.
styles and how has that worked for you?
I haven't really gone too far since I found NADRO. I try to do pretty much exactly what Merritt teaches as close as I can. I'm kind of still in that, as he calls it. He says, "Be unoriginal before you become original." So I'm still in that copying original phase, just trying to work things out, find my niche. So I really haven't endeavored too far outside of the just plain straight up NADRO process.
And but you said that you kind of found something that was true for you. I'm familiar with NADRO. I'm familiar with Merritt Black's style and all of that. That's, as the story goes, that's how I got my start into futures. How has it worked for you? Like, you put us behind your eyes, and why did that become the truth for you, and what was the big change there?
Um, Kind of hard to explain. It was really the way. For one, I just felt Merritt was a really good teacher for the way that I was able to learn things. He was just able to explain things, and I was able to get it right off the bat um, without much further research, I guess. Um, yeah, it just enabled me. It gave me more clarity than I had ever felt before. I don't know. It just gave me more confidence in what my read like. It gave me more confidence in my ability to read the market, I guess.
I see. So would you say like structure or price action or just market interpretation or general
Oh,
bias
structure,
or
absolutely.
structure? Yeah, okay. Well, where do you seem to struggle, and maybe why do you think that is?
I think my biggest is execution and just the behaviors around that. So I guess that would bleed into trade management and risk management as well.
So
Um,
go further with execution. What does that mean?
Main part, I don't have a super, NAD was very discretionary, so I don't have a super mechanical execution model, I guess. The very basic thing that Merritt will teach is just a Heikin-Ashi shift.
Right.
And I started with that, did that for a while, found that I don't want to say not good enough for me, but I feel like I am able to get better entries and understand my entry a little bit better through other methods. And that led me to start studying further into order flow, things like the footprint. And I tried DOM a little bit, didn't really like it. Merritt kind of explains that everything you would see on a DOM, you could see with historical basis on things like cumulative delta and the footprint.
Right. So so what you're saying, what I'm hearing you say is that there's your timing is a little bit inconsistent.
Yes.
Do you think that's based on risk, or is it based on, not being clear on what the actual criteria for execution is?
I think a little bit of both.
How would you pin
I
it
think I
down?
think there are times where I become more confident, where I see um, increased relative delta, increased volume on the footprint. Bam, I'm in. I'm confident like that. And then there are other times where I'm just not so confident.
Do you find that, the presence of signals is easier to trade against, or to take action against rather than the absence of signals, which both indicate the same thing, or both can indicate the same thing?
Yeah, I think signals is definitely more helpful.
So you're especially like when you start thinking about the concept of absorption, the lack of new highs. This is one of
Yeah.
my favorite sort of, it's a signal until it's not a signal, right? But like the lack of new highs with new highs in delta divergence. Okay, so it's absorption until it's not. So that would be the lack of a presence of a new piece of information. They're not making new highs yet, and so maybe would that be a scenario where your execution is less clear in those kinds of circumstances?
Oh, absolutely.
And why do you suppose that is?
Well, I think, well, specifically around absorption, I'm less skilled in identifying that, I think. Um, but I think just in that concept in general, if I don't have something, it's different to see a big order come in and that's super obvious rather than waiting for there to not be one,
Mm-hmm.
there could not be one any other time.
Right. Yeah, maybe I'll come back to that for a second. But how do you prepare for the day? I was reading today's entry and I thought it was really fascinating. So these questions are already pre-prepared, so I didn't write this based on what I read today, but I'd like to hear how you prepare.
Yeah, so I fill out that Notion template that I post in my little feedback channel. So I'll go through my top-down analysis through NADRO, go over the market profiles, look for composite areas, long-term VWAPs, and then create my narrative through that. And then I'll have my hypothesis chart where I have areas where I'm looking to take trades, but it's not super concrete because, of course, I'm waiting for the market to tell me what's actually appropriate. Yeah, and then I'd go from there.
So just break that down and pretend like I'm a total beginner and I have no idea what you just said.
So let me pull it up and I can walk through it. Okay, so I will write down the conditions, bullish, neutral, rotational, or bearish, based on each interval of a long-term VWAP. So yearly, quarterly, monthly, and weekly. And then also whatever news and events that I deem significant for the day, I'll write down. Not that I'm going to trade them because I specifically don't do that, just to be aware of when it's going to happen. It could be something that I want to be flat into, something I want to avoid being a few minutes ahead of,
Mm-hmm.
But not to make a trade decision. Yeah, and then I'll do screenshots of the levels that I have of the daily TPO chart, a chart with my CVA structures, so any of the profiles that I've combined together and highlighted that are significant, and then just a basic hypo chart with same levels and somewhat of a bias of where I would like to place the trades and what direction I want to be in. And then a list of the levels and where they came from. And that's all I do before. At the end of it, I do a little part of a review, just screenshot my fills, how the market reacted to my levels.
So
Yeah.
so that sounds like a pretty structured top-down view. So you got your areas of interest, all before the market and those sorts of things. As I'm looking at your, just so you know what I'm looking at, I'll just share my screen, which is going to look like Inception, I guess here. There you go. But you have these levels set out on your prep and area of interest and all those kinds of things. So that all makes sense. I guess the question is that when it comes down to your actual execution in this little area here, how precise is your execution criteria? Given the fact that execution is where you're a little soft, um, how precise is what's going on here in terms of decision logic?
You meaning like in terms of like points?
No, I mean in terms of just logic.
Um, I guess if I'm being honest, it would be less precise. Um, Today specifically, I wasn't using a Heikin-Ashi chart, so probably a little less specific. I was looking for orders on the footprint.
Okay. So, and is that how, if you were to wait out like what the decision criteria is to click the button, what's the what's the ordered steps or ordered criteria?
So price will have to come to my level. Developing value intraday. So the VWAPs with standard deviations on the daily time frame, that will have to agree with the direction of the trade that I want to take.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's complicated to go into, but if that does, if the developing value for the day is in agreement with that trade, then I'll take the trade. Once it gets there, I have to see proper acceptance. Again, that's a complicated concept, but it has to agree with the trade. And then a shift in momentum, and that's where the Heikin-Ashi shift or a large order or break in the footprint, whatnot.
So just for reference, as we're looking at this screenshot, it appears to me, based on how you described it, that we've got the daily alignment long. And, I guess, do we have acceptance here or no?
Some, not as much as I would like to have.
What does that mean? Think about like you were talking to a computer. What does that mean?
I would like it to be further into developing value, closer to VWAP.
Is it okay if it touches it, or is it not okay if it touches it?
I think it's okay. Likely diminished opportunity if it does.
Does it matter if all this over here, does this have all these pivots? Does that have any significance if it takes that out or doesn't take it out, or?
Not on a price level wise, but if it breaks back inside the first standard deviations, that's showing me that the imbalance down is weakening.
Okay. So what does this area here mean? That it looks like it came from a lower low and then broke, or I guess tested it. How precise do you get it? Tested, pushed in, pushed out, pushed in, pushed out again, pushed back in. Like how precise are you evaluating all that information in that little square there?
I think today specifically, I was maybe a little too focused on the footprint, so actually probably really precise on that one. Trying to be really precise.
Okay. And that didn't work, and is that appropriate that it didn't work? Should this have worked but it didn't, or is this an error?
I would consider first attempt an error. I'm sorry, first attempt would be okay. Second two definitely errors.
Okay. So why?
I think. Let me pull the charts and look there real quick. So I think the first one was okay. We got the pop back inside on RTH and ETH DVA. RTH was above, so it was bullish. So I think that was appropriate to take the long there. But the second, once I had seen price, well, the screenshot you're looking at, that is ETH, but on RTH, price was just rotating back and forth between both extremes, the plus and minus twos.
I see.
So once I had seen that happen, I really should be looking for more acceptance above, and that value wants to follow it. Or developing value wants to follow price up above that level. If it's just rotating across it, then it's not something I want. I want the price, like the market, to make a decision at that point. Really.
Do you have in your trading? If you were to think of like a trade like this, are you trading? Are you buying lows, or are you buying wick lows, or are you buying the body of the low of the candle, or all the way up to the mid? Before trying to get up to here. If you were to try and describe your trade entry location for, let's just call this the move, and we're not ever gonna really get the low and then sell the high. Not usually, I would say, if ever. Where are you in that candle, that metaphorical candle in this trade idea?
I am not at the very bottom, but as close as I can be wherever the momentum shifts.
So like right down here, right as soon as it dips down and starts to lift off with momentum.
Ideally.
Okay. And is that based on risk? Is that based on how well you know the model works? What is that based on?
That, I guess it's just my understanding of market dynamics. It's just when the momentum shifts, I want to see that shift be held.
Hmm. And a momentum shift, is that a higher high or a higher, like at what point is it market shift, and then at what point is it not anymore?
I'd say a strong shift was a Heikin-Ashi shift on a higher time frame, say 3,000 volume.
Mm-hmm. And did you have that here, or?
I wasn't using it today. I was trying to focus more on the footprint.
Okay. So
I am working on leaning further off of Heikin-Ashi, if that, or at least that's my desires. I don't want to try to lean on it so heavy because I feel like it's less accurate than I could be.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Okay, I could see that. That makes sense. So how are you counteracting getting emotional in your trading? I mean, if you find, like, you get three pop outs just like this, and you even said that these are errors here, these second and third trades. What process do you got involved today to try and help you with that, Mason?
To be honest, I don't have anything solid, anything written down, any specific rules. If I get 3 trades in a row, they're all full 1R stops, I'm out for the day. That's, like, I think I said this is my daily loss limit.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And that's broker enforced, so I am not able to take trades after that, which I think is super important.
Yeah.
Yeah, I thinking about it, I should have more rules around that. I've played with the idea of maybe 2 strikes, move on to the next idea. Yeah.
How often does either this sequence or a daily loss limit happen, would you say?
Daily loss limit probably once a week. Taking more attempts on an idea than I would like happens more often than I would like.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And do you think, like, is that because you've just seen it play out so many times where you just seem to be early for whatever reason?
Yes, yeah.
Like, I mean, today this is a perfect example. This is exactly what happened. I was trading this too. I gave it 3 shots based on what it was doing, and then it finally went. But how do you who the heck knows when it's going to decide it wants to go or whatever.
Right.
So this ended up taking off before lunch. So it's kind of a fascinating thing. I used to be bothered by that in the past. I'm not anymore, but um, yeah, I'm kind of curious how you're dealing with that. If you started to compartmentalize that, you think the fact that you think that you're early, or the market conditions aren't right, or maybe you're not following the NADRO process well enough. Have you thought about all that?
Yeah, I immediately after taking that last stop, I went and tried to figure out what was going on. And I think I wrote about it in my accountability. I had totally missed part of my read. I disregarded the weekly VWAPs,
Mm-hmm.
kind of deemed it as neutral. And literally right off the open, we went and balanced down, and I didn't recognize that. So my long was going straight into a bearish reference.
Right. All
Um,
your stops look like money stops. So they basically, is that what it is?
what do you mean by that?
Well, they all look like the same distance. It doesn't seem to have any reference to structure. Is it?
Correct.
It's just a money stop. Okay. Um, well, the last question I have, and then I could just kind of tell you about what I do a little bit. But if you could wave a wand, make yourself better at any single thing related to trading, what would it be?
Timing.
Timing. You feel like once you get a good trade, you kind of know what to do with it.
Yeah, well, no. And then another one of my biggest problems is holding winners.
Oh, really?
So,
Okay.
oh yes.
Yeah. Yeah, I've seen a lot of this developing value stuff is really appealing. I mean, I tell you, it's fun to look at, and historically, it just seems like such small risk on these huge winners. But knowing how to conceptualize and break down, okay, yeah, that's great if you can catch the rocket before it takes off. But what about the times it's, false start, false start, false start, false start? You don't have
Right.
infinite risk. So, yeah, I completely can understand how this leads to that. I do have one other question. Why did you switch to the line? Was this line on close or line on open or line on low, or what? Why this view of the market? Why did you do that?
I don't use that to trade at all. It's literally just for the screenshot, so you can see the fills a little bit better.
Oh, I see.
And even at that, it's not even helpful.
Yeah, yeah, no kidding. Yeah, there's a lot of problems in documentation. It's hard to get to something that's intelligible a week later or 2 weeks later. I totally understand that. Um, well, as far as all this goes, one of the things that I do is I do trader workshops where we'll do something similar to this, where we can break down your entire workflow from preparation all the way through trade management. And it's a similar interview style, and I just break down every single process. Today, you're a little high level, so we're not digging down into the and I notice, if you don't mind me saying, a little hesitancy to get detailed on what it is that you're doing, and it's maybe you think it's because that NADRO is difficult to explain. I know that it kind of can be.
Mhm.
Things like acceptance or ambiguous terms, and that's one of the problems with trading is that if there's ambiguity in any one of the steps, um, then you're going to struggle with it, wondering whether or not it's you. Like for instance, you mentioned that idea that the weekly level wasn't, um, wasn't in complete sync with the bullish narrative. Well, man, I could tell you, if every single time I looked back and found one single thing that seemed to be out of alignment with my charts, that explained all the stop outs, I'd be a bazillionaire if I just had $1 for every time
Right.
that happened. Okay, so that's not necessary. I wouldn't want you to mislead yourself to think that those trades could have worked without you looking at that. So the real question is are you not looking at that because it actually doesn't provide any value, or are you not looking at that because you forgot? Are you not looking at it because yeah, why? And breaking that down so that any amount of information that we bring into our assembly and into our processes don't have anything to do with whether or not we could find the exception to the rule that would have made this situation pan out. Because
Right.
ultimately, we don't really know. And if you think about it, while risk and profit and all those sorts of things seem to edge on probabilities, what's not based on probability is how the market books price. Fact of the matter is it's based on time and price. It's not hard to understand that it's very quantitative. So in that way, our execution should be as close to the algorithm of how the market moves its price to begin with. Otherwise, we're going to deal with a level of ambiguity, and if you're dealing with ambiguity, then you have to eliminate variables, not add them, if people choose to trade that way. So, not saying right or
Right.
wrong, but there's nothing wrong with NADRO. It works, but you got to have to have a methodology for dealing with the ambiguity. For me personally, I couldn't. I can still remember to this day the guy trying to explain to me. Does Merritt still use that idea of a window? This being a window right there.
I haven't heard him touch on that
Okay, well, there's the way back. That was how it was described to me, that this is a window.
window.
Well, it's what they're saying is it's a pullback, and it's a way of trying to describe acceptance. Basically, the way you thought it was acceptance. If this had happened, that probably would have been an
Right.
ideal setup, right? That's acceptance. That's how you describe it. What makes it acceptance? Well, generically speaking, price is spending time in developing value. So there's one piece of information. Maybe you could say that it's got two lower lows that are inside developing value, and then that's an agreement with a higher time frame, et cetera,
Right.
et cetera.
Window. I've never heard him refer to it as a window. Usually it's like you use volume candles, so you're spending time doing volume above at higher prices.
Right.
And I think he says like something like half a rotation inside developing value, something like that.
Yeah, but either way you look at it, but it was just this. All it was is just basically a pullback that broke structure. Really, it's really what it
Right.
boils down to. But and it could have been the guy who was explaining it to me. Hard to say. It doesn't matter. The point is like part of the why I have a mission in all of this is because I absolutely refuse to deal with ambiguity in trading. I squeeze it out like a sponge. I just have no interest in ambiguity. And if something has to be ambiguous, then I know it's going to be ambiguous, and there's no other way around it. Um, and discretion and ambiguity are not the same thing. So,
Right.
anyways, um, so that's what I do. And if anybody's interested in that, I'd be glad to talk to you guys. But I appreciate you taking the time, Mason. Sounds like you're off on a really great start. And if you're trading full time, taking care of yourself that way, that's pretty great, especially on micros.
Yeah, absolutely. I appreciate that. And to be clear, I'm not full time quite yet. I'm supplementing, but working towards it.
Oh, I see. Oh, I misunderstood what you meant by had a job and kind of.
Oh no. I'm still doing part time gigs.
Oh, okay, right. Well, either way, that's still pretty
I
awesome.
wish.
Yeah, I mean, it's a great business. I personally think trading is a lot of fun, and it's very hard. And I think the most impressive thing I've ever gained from it or learned from it is just how much you learn about yourself as an
Oh,
individual.
absolutely.
And
Oh,
I'll
absolutely.
I'll maybe part with this. One of the things that I have learned about myself in trading also exists in the rest of my life. So there's nothing I've learned in trading that wasn't also being done in other places, but it doesn't express itself quite as often, and certainly without as much. I don't want to say without as much volatility, but like you got money on the line, so it comes to the surface faster.
Hmm.
So, anyways, um,
Definitely.
Ziggy, you want to hand it back to you?
Yeah, thanks so much for coming in and joining us today, both you guys. I wanted to just quickly just ask you something, Tix, there. And because this seems more understandable because I guess you're on like a limited kind of bullets per day. Like I think like
Hmm.
3 stop outs, whatever you'd be out. Like that's fine. That makes sense. It's just still on the low side in terms of trade count.
Yeah,
One
absolutely.
thing I was wondering, so I understand why you'd kind of hit a daily loss limit more frequently than someone who's like could have 5 bullets on the day or something, right? But my question is like, out of the days that you hit your daily loss limit, like how often of those days can you look back on your trades and be like, I probably shouldn't have taken that one, or I shouldn't have taken that one? Like, like how often are there some kind of like non-setup or like low conviction trades in the daily loss limit?
Pretty often. And in fact, my win rate on lost days is terrible. Like, if you on
Yeah.
TraderView, it'll break down your win versus lost days, and it's horrendous. So
Well,
it's,
yeah.
I
I
don't know if
mean,
it's just a misread, if
well, I
something
can't.
goes on.
I'm not. It's not. It's not my system. It's not my results. Like I don't exactly have like a bulletproof solution or idea. But what definitely comes to mind just from like looking at even this daily loss limit and I think the last one, what comes to mind is just like a bit of like a slowdown moment here. Like as I think um, if you are like about to take a trade and you're mentally aware of the fact that it's like low quality or like you shouldn't take it, or it's just like I'm fighting this, like there's this really, it's not here. You're less likely to take it when you're kind of like really when it's in your face. And so I think sometimes if we can do things that um, will put that in our face, that's going to help. And I think for some people it's going to be different things. For me, I like that tends to be putting things in my face from my charts and just that being very clear that way. And sometimes I just wonder if there's a way for you to kind of take some of these kind of like low conviction trades, bullshit trades, whatever, and reduce that so that even if you're wrong on the idea or you stop out, whatever, that you're not following that up with like multiple, low conviction things. And I think
Right.
that is largely going to be tied to you probably not fully emotionally releasing from the first trade. Like I'm guessing the first trade stop out slash, maybe you stopped out and then it like rocketed away where you thought it was going to go without you. And if you can't like let go of some of those things, I think you're just going to be more prone to taking those extent like more stop losses ahead of a daily loss limit. Do you, so when that happens, like, so here you, because you have an accountability channel and you document it and you're forced to sit there and read it and you're actually putting it out in front of an audience, and that's something that I think is probably a bit of uncomfort in that, like
Mhm.
in there. But without like our channel here or anything, or prior to this, do you like sweep some of that stuff under the rug, or do you kind of force yourself to like, sit down and journal that stuff out?
In the past, I definitely would sweep it under the rug, but I think now I'm pretty good at facing it. Like I will get no, not like it's dangerous to get upset at yourself in some ways, but like I know when I'm wrong and I know when I fucked up. Like
Yeah, yeah. So you're getting closer to probably doing that before it happens. I think like you're getting closer to that, because I think if you, I don't know if it's going to need to be a break. I don't know if it's going to need to be something on your charts that's like, hey, you just like, you just stopped out and here's a timer for 5 minutes, or something that's like in your face, that I think maybe you could just put a little attention to. Maybe like if you stop out, it's fine. Right? Bang, you stopped out, you're wrong, whatever. But I think if I'm in your shoes personally, I'm putting an effort on trying to not take not turn every like losing morning into like a daily loss limit,
right,
because it seems like there's just too much of a low quality, low conviction thing. And I just think about some of the things that might, help with getting those things in your face, and trying to recognize them before you start pressing the buttons, like, and if you had a good habit of like, as your trait, like on the other spectrum, for a trade that's actually going to work out, if you sit there and you have time, like, okay, this is where I'm going to watch for it, here it comes, like I'm ready, here it goes, this is it. If you can like have a bit of a pattern with how you are doing that for your winners, well, that's not going to be there for some of your low quality losers. So I think maybe a little more emphasis on a bit of your kind of what you're exactly, and I know you have some discretion element of what you're doing with the NADRO, and kind of the way that you're piecing those together each day, but I still
Mhm.
think if you had a slightly more kind of defined kind of good trade versus like, separating those from the lower ones, I just think you might be able to kind of reduce those daily loss limit days. And that's something measurable. You could measure, you could look at how many daily loss limits you had in the last 30 days or 60 days, whatever. And then you could say, okay, what's that number? How many did I have? Okay, well, you know, you don't have to like set numbers on things, because the market's going to, be largely in control of this, but I think you could, aim at like reducing that. And I think that would be a helpful step forward for you, possibly.
yeah, absolutely.
Here's
Yeah.
I'll show you this, and it's a different way to get to the same goal. Ziggy, you always bang on, high quality setups versus low quality setups. Of course, me, I never take low quality setups.
Only
So
the
there's no
best.
there's no there's no only no point in tracking them. Let's see here. But I wanted to show you this, and this is one of the consistent features. This begs on the Tendler idea of your A game, B game, C game, and the inchworm of your abilities. But one of the things that I find value in is understanding my workflows that are consistent. If you think about what you're doing every single day, there is a workflow, there is a pattern that you're following. I don't care if it's how you wake up, how you brush teeth, how you go get coffee, it doesn't matter. You are following a pattern. And the science is pretty consistent on that. So one of the things that I have taken to doing is really deeply examining all of the behaviors that associate with my stop outs, and saying, well, what didn't I do? Like what we talked about with when you looked backwards and you said, oh, the weekly, blah, blah, blah. Well, how many times have you done that and you looked forward and said, I'm not going to do that tomorrow. I'm not going to do that. And then it never occurred again. Like that thing never
Mhm.
showed up again. Well, that's because, well, I shouldn't say that's because. In a lot of cases, what I've found is like that is just a recency bias. That is a confirmation bias. That we were looking for exception management, and why would we be surprised when we found one? We were looking for an exception, we found one. That should not surprise us. However, there should be a consistent structural behavior thing, a workflow that is very consistent in what you do. Like for example, one of the things that I do when I'm not trading well is that I'll get a big trade and then I'll walk away. I'll be like, boom, did it. I'm done. I'm so happy that I had a great trade that I don't want to even mess with it again, even though like that trade may have happened pre-market. So I won't even engage the market anymore. Um, and there's these other things that I'll do where a stop out workflow, where if I have a stop out immediately, that should tell me that I'm not in alignment with the market. I shouldn't be getting stopped out with proper risk, with no scale out, nothing like that, without the market saying that should be telling me that the market is doing something it shouldn't be doing. The way I interpret it. So is my stop out workflow engaging? Yeah. Am I in my A game? Am I willing to go, hey, it stopped out? That's interesting. I didn't think that should have happened given how the setup is supposed to work. So, or another one, and this one's really common. I reading tape versus just looking for configuration. How many times I've caught myself just sitting there, I'm just blankly staring at the screen. I'm not reading it, I'm not watching it, I'm just sitting there waiting like a monkey waiting to click a button.
Yep.
That's bad. That's really freaking bad. So if I caught myself on a day where the day after the day there was stop outs, or the market went where I kind of thought it was supposed to go, was I doing this? Yes. And I was in my C game. I was looking for patterns only. This is a recipe for disaster. So this is a workflow I caught myself in, and I need to be able to say, no, no, no. The only way to counteract this is to understand the workflow that I'm passively engaging in and turn it to an active one so that I'm doing the A game thing that I need to be doing every single time. That's an example. But here's my elephants.
Awesome. Yeah, great. Yeah, if anybody else has any little comments or suggestions to what we chatted about, you're welcome to unmute. Otherwise, I think we'll wrap up around here.
Good. Well, great to meet you, Mason.
Yeah, y'all too. Thank you guys.
Take care, guys.
Take care.